Season 1, Episode 4, Bobby's Video Long Goodbye, with today's special guest, Jackie Hesse, brought to you by Bob's Discount Furniture with 126 locations in Greater Los Angeles and nationwide. Welcome to Malibu. Welcome to the show. This is the most versatile writer I know. She writes everything, all genres. Is there anything that you, like poetry or something really psychedelic that you haven't tried yet that you think you might enjoy or that might be marketable?
Oh, marketable. Well, poetry's off the list then.
True.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I probably, I mean, I suppose if you gave me a list of things, like, have you done this? Have you done that?
Okay.
But no, so like my undergraduate degree in journalism, and I worked as a reporter, and I have a broadcast degree, as you know.
Yeah.
And I worked in radio, and then did a bunch of marketing, advertising stuff, and also have a degree in German, so in literature, so, and then got an MFA, so, and then taught, and I taught creative writing. No, what did I teach? Freshman comp at Normandale, but creative writing. I've taught creative writing classes, and then technical writing too. I've taught.
All that stuff. Are you fluent enough in German to do it in German if you had to?
No, not anymore.
Really?
No.
But you used to be.
Well, I think I had the potential to be because I lived there. Lived in Austria, actually.
Right.
But yeah, you know what's really hard to get is the nuance.
Yeah.
There's words where you refer to things and people make inferences, and it's a tiny difference.
Yeah.
I notice it in journalism, like, there's loaded words. You think you're reading a story where it's just the facts, ma'am, and it's not.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you used that word.
Right.
So
I've been with people watching foreign movies. It could be German, it could be anything. And they'll be fluent in whatever that language that is, and they'll see the subtitles and they'll go, no, that's not the way it should be going at all.
yeah. I have a friend who speaks several languages, Russian and Ukrainian, and I've had that experience with her too, where I'm like, is that what they said? And not really. Also, she worked for the courts, and she said that sometimes she was an interpreter for the courts. She would listen to interpreters giving legal advice to people on the stand, and she was like, should I be up? She then went on to get her own law degree, but she was like, should I go up and tell the judge, he's not just translating what was just said, he's also offering legal advice. Like, they just offered you a plea bargain. I think you should take it, given the facts in your case here.
How about a couple of other kinds of corporate writing? Because I know you through Thomson Reuters FindLaw, and a lot of our former colleagues are at places where they're writing captions for products, for brochures. It doesn't strike me as the most creative, but to each his own or her own.
Pays the bills.
Yeah, right. So have you ever done anything like that? Any brochure type stuff?
Yeah, when I first worked for a small firm called Harman & Associates, which it was a small international, we did international advertising for German clients. So I wrote all kinds of brochures. I had to write brochures that salesmen who typically had a high school education used the salesman might have been more educated, but they sold to the guys who owned jukeboxes and pool tables.
Oh, okay.
And dart machines. So
Okay.
those were usually high school educated guys who were making their money a quarter at a time.
Yeah.
And so we had to talk about the benefits of whatever product, the features and benefits, in a way that made them, want to take action and buy it, that it
Yep.
was a lucrative endeavor. And it was passive income, right?
Right.
Put this thing on the wall in the bar
Right.
and come back every week and take your money out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, I think, the thing that's most interesting is knowing your audience. To whom are you speaking, and also, what's the mission of the rhetoric? What are you trying to get them? Are you trying to change their beliefs?
Right.
Are you trying to get them to take action?
Right.
Are you trying to confirm their beliefs? Are you
Yes.
trying to, usually advertising is creating a void, right?
Correct.
You smell bad, so you need to
Correct.
buy this.
Right,
So you don't
right.
smell bad.
Yeah,
you don't
right.
have friends and.
Right. No, I've been there. I've been on both ends of that. By the way, speaking of marketing and products and services and stuff, if you heard the horn playing La Cucaracha a few minutes ago, that is a food truck that serves the Tex-Mex type food.
Is it any good?
I've never eaten from a food truck.
It sounds
I understand
perfect.
they've come. Are they in the Twin Cities, food trucks?
Food trucks seem like the perfect pandemic panacea, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, I just, and I saw that movie with, I can't remember his name now, playing the dad who went from a food truck to a chef, or maybe from a chef. He wanted to show the world he was a great chef, so he got his own food truck. I forget what the title of it was. I just can't bring myself to eat from a food truck. I like to see a health card posted, framed on the wall.
the secret is to have a couple drinks before you do it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe our food trucks serve alcohol. I don't know. It's a numbing agent or something. Do you get a bigger kick out of your fiction than your various kinds of nonfiction that you've written? Or is it just a different kind of thrill?
Well, I would say it's like, a straight news story versus a feature story. A feature story has all the elements of fiction, right? You're telling a story, you're creating a character, there's a plot. I loved creating fiction. The muse would speak to me. I think I have trouble now because of all the cancers. The people who say you can't do that, and you can't do that, and you can't do that. And the haters, and with social media, they can reach you anywhere you are. And so I have trouble with that because, as with any art, right? You put your heart into it, and you believe that you're giving a gift to the world, and then people tell you, you're hurting people.
And you're telling your truth through fictional people who you've created. I always thought, like in post-grad school, I took some English classes, and it just finally came to me, that I hadn't been taught in undergrad school, was that these people are speaking this author's truth. These created people, these fictional people, maybe models for real people he or she had known, but still, the truth was being told about a certain situation or moral dilemma or what have you through these imaginary people.
Well, Emily Dickinson says, you tell the truth, but you tell it slant. So I think it's the greatest act of empathy to imagine what it's like to be someone you're not. They talk about autofiction and memoir, autobiography, and that you have to have a close relationship to the event to be able to portray it accurately, accuracy and authenticity, and you have to somehow be very closely tied to the characters you're creating to have an authentic voice. And while that's true, and I recognize that people have been kept from the table and a lot of voices have not been heard, I guess the question is how many seats are at the table, and the other question is who's the best person to tell this story. Well, I believe that anyone can tell any story, and you can read it or you don't have to read it. But I think the greatest act of empathy any of us can undertake is to imagine what it would be like if you were to write a story about a woman who was sexually abused. You would have to imagine what it's like to have that experience.
That's true.
And that would impart a great sense of empathy in you. And it would invoke your curiosity too. You'd probably ask people women a lot of questions about it, right?
Right, yeah.
And so it would be a mix of your imagination, your observation,
and the research.
And maybe you nail it, and maybe people think you've done a great job and you win the Pulitzer.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't, and people are like, oh, that's a terrible novel.
What was that? Oprah had a favorite guy maybe 10 years ago, James Fry, whose book was found out to be
fake.
Totally fake, yeah.
And if he just said this is fiction, he would have been okay.
Right.
I remember seeing him on the Oprah show.
Yeah.
And he had this countenance that just told me something wasn't right.
Not convincing.
Oh, and in his book, I remember reading his book, and he talked about the bottle of booze, opening it and smelling it.
Yeah.
And then he drove around for a long time, and he said he set it on a corner, still unopened. And I said, no, you didn't. You said you opened it and smelled it a whole bunch of times. Also, he had Oprah. He was on the Oprah show, and he was driving around his terrible drug-infested neighborhood, which looked like my neighborhood in Mendota Heights, where I grew up. I'm like, oh, really? The Colonial on the corner with the pine tree with the kids playing jump rope out in front? That's your, it just wasn't, something wasn't right there.
He would have been great for the perjury industry if he was accidentally contradicting himself like that all the time. But that was not the kind of pub you want for any writing project. In this case, was it fiction or non-fiction-y fiction, or what was it? Either way, it was found to be a fraud, and it was embarrassing to her and her book club.
Yeah, and just call it what it is. And I think, if if where we're going is that the only people who can tell the story are the people who actually experienced it,
Mm-hmm.
as they are, right? Like
Mhm.
I can't write a person who's
Mhm.
Hispanic
Right.
because I'm not,
Right.
and I can't write about being an immigrant because
Mhm.
I'm not. You know, if we really narrow it down to saying only people who've had the experience who are of the ethnicity and gender
Mm-hmm.
can write it, well, there's no more fiction.
Yeah. No more science fiction either, because we can't pretend to know what Martians are feeling, right? It would just destroy all kinds of creativity. You mentioned Emily Dickinson. Have you seen any of the Dickinson series on Apple Plus TV? Because I recommend it. It's a dramedy. They're trying to find some comedy in the life of the young Emily Dickinson. So I would recommend to you and to everyone, Apple Plus TV. For some reason, that is the only place you'll ever be able to see this. Apple Plus is super proprietary, and they don't. It's not going to show on other platforms. So you
Is
better.
that with Molly?
Haley Steinfeld, who was in that version of True Grit that the Coen brothers did. She's excellent.
No, the
Miss
Molly,
Dickinson.
the woman from Saturday Night Live, the funny.
Molly Shannon?
Yes,
I don't think so.
with dark.
Right. I know who
hair.
you're talking about. She's a great ditz. You know, does some great character acting in a series like the HBO thing with Sarah Jessica Parker called Divorce. She's super versatile. She's very entertaining. This is Haley Steinfeld and Jane Krakowski, formerly of Ally McBeal.
Yeah.
She plays Emily Dickinson's mom. And I don't know, maybe it's the kind of thing where you had to be there, but I would definitely recommend it.
Now, so we're at the point now where the young hotties are playing the mothers.
I guess so. Can't wait till they get to grandmother status and see
Oh my
what
God.
happens.
It happens so fast.
I just found out about you before you guys arrived for this visit that about the Austria thing and the German thing. I remember meeting people when I lived in Minnesota who told me about feeling like they needed to go to an ancestral home. They needed to visit Germany or Norway or Austria or something like that. I've never felt the tug to go to either Ireland or England, which is my two sides of the family, the drinking side and the literary side. I never,
Can't have one without the other.
I wound up there on business accidentally, but it's not like it was a goal of mine. Why was it a goal of yours to go to Austria or to go to Germany or Austria to learn German? Were you just in
Well,
love
it's
with that
required.
language?
It's
Oh, it
required.
was.
You have to study abroad if you get.
Oh my
a
gosh,
minor
I didn't know
major.
that.
Yeah, and I did have. Weirdly, I felt stronger ties when I was younger
Mm-hmm.
to my ancestors and the language. I knew a smattering of German.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I wanted to, I guess, understand where I came from.
Mhm.
And
Are you still considered fluent?
no, I'm sure
You could not, if you landed in Germany today, you couldn't start a
could
new
talk.
life with a job and job interviews and.
I don't know how malleable my brain is. I'm having trouble with English these days.
It's the
so.
kind of apparently from what I know of other bilingual people, and I really admire that aptitude because I did not have it. They say that you really have to. It's like practicing the piano. You have to practice, and
Yeah.
otherwise it will leave you partially or completely.
Yeah, I did go back a few years ago, and it took me about 3 or 4 days, and then it all came back. But I was so hesitant. Like, is that the right? Am I conjugating that verb correctly?
Yep, that's where I went wrong with Spanish.
Is that
Yeah.
or is that the right word for that?
Tense and verb agreement and blah blah blah.
Should I just say I'm horny or I'm hot?
Yeah, exactly. I can see where there could be all kinds of comic misunderstandings on a German sitcom. The only thing is, the language doesn't. It can be such a violent language, which is why when we see this historic footage of Hitler, he couldn't exactly take that on cable as a
Being punched
comedian.
in the face with words.
So this horse walks into a bar. Just doesn't lend itself to comedy.
Bartender says, "Why the long face?"
Yep. We were discussing yesterday the most recent, I guess, marketable writing of yours, a story which you're very proud of, and I was honored that you asked me to help with the adaptation of it. Tell us about My Assassin and about this game Assassin, which I had not heard of previous to lunch yesterday.
So it's a game that's played in high schools I think across the United States. It's teams. You set up teams in the high school, and it's not authorized by any of the administration. And it's freshman through senior, and you get on teams, and you're usually with people of your own grade, but you can mix and match. And there's a commissioner who creates whose team plays whose team, and it's elimination. You pay probably $25 to play.
Okay.
Right? Each person.
Yep.
So it's a big pot. There's a few $1,000 at stake. And every week, teams, team A is against team B, and then C against D, and then whoever wins that, they play each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not on school grounds or during school or at school events. And it's only Monday through Friday.
Mm.
And so kids have Nerf guns,
Mm-hmm.
which, it's a soft,
Yeah.
I mean, it hurts
Yeah,
a little bit, but,
yeah.
and they have,
It's not paintball.
no,
It's nothing that could sting or leave a mark or anything.
well, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And they lie in wait for one another to kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to have a confirmed kill,
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you're going to your job, right? You can't get them at their job, but you can get them to and from.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you're going to your job and you're in your car and you park your car and you're waiting and you have to check the area because
Mhm.
you have to run into Burger King and
Mhm.
the back door, and you call your buddy at Burger King and say, "Open the back door, I'm coming in." And so it's really fun for them, and
Mhm.
it's exciting. There have been some issues with kids racing with their cars, and
Yeah.
there was an accident actually. I think there was a fatality at some high school, but so then kids play against each other to be the winning team, and they play for that pot of money.
Okay.
And the commissioner is the one who comes to the scene of the crime and decides if it.
Who decides who the commissioner is?
They're usually voted in. My son's team won
Mhm.
when he was a junior, and he said to me, "What do I do now? I've won the whole school." And
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I think you become the commissioner." And so he became the commissioner. He would be on his phone at night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, down by the fireplace, pacing back and forth. Okay, and he's a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
Tell me how many feet away from the door was he when he said he wasn't shot? Okay, where was
Oh,
Alex?
they go to
What's
him
the
for
angle?
rulings? They go to
And
him
he would
for
go out
rulings
and he
on
would take his measurements
Yeah.
and measure the angle. He said, actually, it's impossible for you to have been here and hit him at that angle with the wind. I looked, the wind
Wow.
was 15 miles an hour east
It's like
that
a
day.
judge and a commissioner
And yeah, they have all kinds of rules.
okay.
And one of the rules is anyone who's completely naked can't be killed, but can kill others. So you can take off all your
Literally
clothes.
naked?
Literally naked.
naked.
You can take your gun and run up to whoever the unsuspecting person is. Actually, my daughter was trapped. She was in a car. Her friends were going to drop her off in the alley, and the other team was lying in wait. It was night. It was very dark. She took off all her clothes and ran in the house.
Hunger Games with nudity. Wish they'd had those kind of games when I was growing up. And is there extra credit for this? What does this prepare these people for? To
I think real
find out how
life.
to have fun? Oh, okay.
But they will lie and wait under a porch for 2 hours for someone to come home, and then shoot them up between the steps.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they do creative things like, and you have to establish the rules, but let's say you park your car somewhere and you get into where you're going, okay, we can go attach a Nerf bullet, underneath your car door handle,
Mm-hmm.
and if you touch that, you're dead because that's a grenade. So you have to check your car out before you get in it.
Okay.
So I think,
So for your story, the purposes of your story, this is the setting, this is the background, and you have two people who have a relationship or baggage or what have you, right? That they're working out
on opposite teams,
amid this backdrop of
and they have to
assassin
fight
game.
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've also got their own, you know how emotional arcs are and
Yeah.
plot arcs and all that. They've also got their own things to go through. And there's also, the setting is a high school. And there's
Right.
all kinds of drama going on at the high school.
This is YA. This is young adult genre.
It's young adult, and I would say I like to take risks.
Mhm.
And I also raised 2 children who played this game,
Mhm.
and I was deeply involved in this type of shenanigan. It's totally up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of beta readers,
Mm-hmm.
and they offered feedback. And my son Wolf and his friends Luke and Pascal and all these other guys, and Ava and her friends, gave me feedback and they said to me, even reading that, their adrenaline shot through the roof because
Wow.
it brought it all back. It's a huge rush.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's really at stake, right? You
Right.
get pinged with a
Right. Yeah.
bullet,
Yeah.
but so much is at stake.
Huh.
You have to have stealth. You have to have strategy. You have to figure out how you're going to get this place and that place, and who's going to be where.
Yeah.
You know, how you're going to evade being killed and how you're going to,
Right.
you know, sniper them.
Right.
So, you know, I think some people have said to me, "Oh, you can't write that. You know, with all the high school shootings going on, this is terribly tone deaf of you to write that."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is what's going on in high schools. It is. Sorry
Yeah.
if the truth is inconvenient.
Yeah.
It is what's going on. And other people have said to me, actually, people who are the target audience,
Mm-hmm.
people who are 16 to maybe 24-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
you know, young adult, new adult.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what high schoolers need
Yeah.
right now. Like this is
What, like an outlet?
it's safe. It's a safe, healthy outlet.
Okay.
And you know, we do play sports where we tackle one another. And,
True.
You know, and hit one another.
That's true.
And do stuff. So, you know, the fact that it's a Nerf gun or a Nerf sword
Yeah.
or a Nerf bow and arrow,
Yeah.
you know,
When you say beta readers, do you mean people who are kind of charting the progress of your writing and commenting on sections of it as you go? What do you mean by beta readers?
exactly. And they're the target audience. So
Okay.
when I was writing this, my son had just graduated from high school. He was a freshman in college. And I sent it to him and all the members of his team.
Mm-hmm.
Same with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were just a year or two out of it.
Mm-hmm.
When I started writing it, I sent chapters like Luke, for example. One of the characters is modeled on Luke,
Mm-hmm.
who is now a PhD got his PhD in astrophysics or something from UCLA. But
Mm-hmm.
and he would give me feedback. He would say, because one of the characters is an African American male,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Luke.
Mhm.
And I would say, what do you think? It's not him, you
Mhm.
know, but it's based on him, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you think? Is
Mhm.
this good or bad? Or, you know, my son had a very diverse group of friends. He went to Central High School in St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 18 or 20% white. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, many traditions, one
Yeah,
school.
right.
And I wanted to accurately represent that.
Yeah.
That's who's on the team.
Right.
Same with my daughter.
Right.
And then I also wanted feedback to make sure that when I'm writing from a different perspective, that I'm, you know, that's how they felt. Because there's obviously a universality in being human
Sure.
and running from someone who's trying to shoot you with a
Yeah.
Nerf gun. So the feedback I got was very overwhelmingly positive. I actually get bugged every year about when is this going to come out.
Yeah.
You know, so I realized that.
But they taught you stuff also.
Oh my gosh.
They were instructive as to
Yeah. Oh,
little points of.
my son rigged up one of his guns with a motor,
Mm-hmm.
and we went through the details of how he did that,
Okay.
and what he was thinking when he did that, and was
Okay.
that legal? And you know, and then yeah, different scenarios that my daughter had been in with her friends when they're out trying to, you know,
Yeah.
surround someone's house at night, and you know, are the cops going to be called, or the neighbor's going to call? Is the neighbor going to let out his dog? And
The beta reader concept to me reminds me of way back in the day. This was decades ago. Tom Wolfe put out in installments, I believe that it was either Bonfire of the Vanities or The Right Stuff, and Rolling Stone every 2 weeks would publish an installment until, you know, months down the line, the guy had a complete book.
so it was a serial
That's what that
novel, like a
reminds me of.
Dickens
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know, I was going to make this a novel. It is a novel, and I did have a friend of mine from grad school look at it and give me some editing.
Mm-hmm.
But so many people have said this is such a visual
Mhm,
story
mhm.
that it would best be represented as a screenplay in a movie,
Mhm.
you know, where you see these people
Mm-hmm.
and you get actors
Mhm.
to play the roles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so too. It is written like a screenplay. It does
Yeah.
read that way. So
Is it more efficient to reach the YA audience with visuals, with a movie treatment of this story, or are there enough readers who would also of that age range who would also benefit from it in that form?
book sales have never been higher, weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, you know, I'm a writer. That's where I've dedicated my
Mm-hmm.
my energies and
Mhm.
my finances.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I can see it as a movie, and I can see it reaching more people as a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, maybe that's.
Do you recall the first maybe example of something that got you excited about writing, whether it was an event or something in your life that you wrote about, or was it an assignment, or what, you know what I'm saying? Was it someplace you traveled to that you felt you needed to write about, or a letter to the editor, or whatever? Because we had contests. When I was in high school, we had state contests for what was called ready writing, where you sit in a room and you're given a choice of 3 topics and an hour to write on that topic.
Ooh, let's bring those back.
See what I'm saying?
I volunteer.
That was kind of a challenge. It
I
was
like
a challenge.
it. I like it. Writing under pressure, which is
Yeah.
a real world scenario.
So was there what was the form of writing that led you to believe that I'm good at this and it's fun?
I did win a contest
Okay.
in 3rd grade.
Okay.
It was called the Red Balloon Poetry Contest.
Mm-hmm.
We all had to sit in the hallway or whatever. It was the 70s, so pretty loosey-goosey.
Mm-hmm.
Open classrooms. And I sat down, I got a book and a piece of paper, and I wrote a poem about a red balloon.
Mm-hmm.
And I won. And I got to go in this room and pick up like three books of all the books that were there. They're all brand new books.
Mm-hmm.
I won a poetry book, and then I could pick out whatever else I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that excited me. Even then, there were haters. There were people who said, "You didn't write that. You copied that out of a
Oh
book."
my God! Really?
Which is flattering,
Yeah.
and also insulting. Like flattering to think that it's so good, you can't believe I did it, and
Right.
it's so insulting because they didn't believe that I could do something like that.
Right.
So nobody's ever come up with any evidence to show that that poem was copied. But and I also would give as gifts to people, older women. There was an old woman named Mrs. Simmons who lived on the corner of our street, and I had nothing to give her. She was so loving and giving to us. She wore a turban and always powder and red lipstick and had a cane and bejeweled. She looked like a Hollywood, like a retired Hollywood star.
Yeah.
You know,
Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard.
totally. And I had nothing to give her, right? As a small child, I didn't have any money. Couldn't cook. I didn't, if I picked flowers, it was from someone else's garden.
Yeah.
And so I would write stories. Those were the gifts I would give to these older women. There were 3 or 4 of them on our block who would see me and say, "Oh, come on in," and give me a glass of orange juice and a cookie, and
Yep.
let me look at their jewelry.
Yep.
And talk to me while I'd talk to them while they were ironing or
Yep.
whatever. And so that was the only gift I thought I had that I could give them.
Huh. And what were you reading during this time that was influencing how you were writing, the gradual approach to your voice?
Well, I read a lot of poetry.
Okay.
Piping Down the Valley's Wild was a poetry book I had. And
Okay.
I memorized poems,
Okay.
And then I read, as a young reader, I read books like Call the Wild. I love dog stories. Where the Red Fern Grows, Old Yeller, all those books. I tried to read the Call the Wild's Mother Jack London to my son.
Mm-hmm.
And the words, he had such a vast vocabulary, I would stumble on them. My son would ask me what they meant, and I'd say, we had to look it up, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I could have read something of such a advanced level, but I read recently, maybe 5 years ago, that when kids don't know words, it's fine. They
Yeah.
just gloss over them because they still can get the story.
Yeah.
So it's okay for kids to read books that have words in them that they don't know.
Yeah. But I think it's also, at least with me, I should only speak for myself, that when I would see a word that I thought, well, that's a cool arrangement of letters, I'll look that up and see what that means. And it was like, unlocking, something to that sentence, and it, helped me figure out what the guy or gal was trying to say.
I would underline them and then
Yeah,
come back
go
later.
back, yeah.
Because I didn't want to stop the story.
To give you some idea of just how old I am, I was reading Tom Swift. It was a sci-fi kind of series. Hardy Boys,
Yeah.
Nancy Drew,
Yep, I read all that too.
and a basketball player named Chip Hooper. They always had some sort of super masculine or super smart protagonist, in this series. That's all we had to, that's all there was. Or sports biographies of real athletes, As backward as Fort Worth was, my hometown of Fort Worth, Texas, was then compared to today, where they've got a cultural district that's so cultural that there are actual signs warning you, you're about to enter a cultural district. If you want to turn back, do it now. They would have a rolling library called the Bookmobile, and little libraries that would park in certain places.
Yeah, we had that too.
And it was really neat at that size and that age to go in there and look at all the spines of all the books, go right to the section that interested you, and then you had to kind of because my parents were not readers, and I don't know, I may have been the milkman's child. I don't know, because I been into stuff that they had no interest in. And I remember one book was about the life of the boxer Joe Louis.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting in my father's car. He stopped at a gas station, back when, what did they call it? Ethyl was like 22 cents a gallon or something. And one of his friends, who was the grease monkey gas pumper, would see that I was reading about Joe Louis. And I got to hear one of my first ethnic slurs. What are you reading about that N-word for?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that kind of thing, reading about real life winds up opening other kinds of real life to you, so.
The rule was, we went to the West St. Paul Library, that I could check out anything I wanted.
Mm-hmm, nice.
Anything. I didn't have to stay in the children's section. So
Nice.
I found a book one time called Forever Amber, which was about a prostitute,
Mm-hmm.
I think during the plague.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a few things there, too.
Mhm.
Some of the words were not in the dictionary.
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
But I learned a lot. And yeah, I think it opens up new worlds to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, it just opened the floodgates.
Yeah.
English language, First Amendment, New York Times. That, I just will not hear criticism of any of those, because they just, I don't know, they just meant so much to me.
What does the First Amendment mean? Like, obviously, hate speech is not. You can't yell
Uncovered.
fire
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
crowded theater. What does it mean to
just
you?
doing what you and I do, sending out stories that give us pleasure, that tell the truth about certain situations, the human condition, and so on. I'm, not an extremist in any way, politically, socially, or anything. I just enjoy great wordplay. I enjoy people who can really
So
throw
you
them out there in
believe
an entertaining way.
in the freedom of the imagination.
Yeah,
People should be able to imagine
absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that the Pilgrims came for that. They supposedly came for the religion and stayed for the pie or something. But
Do you think it's freedom of or freedom from religion, or is it both?
I don't know.
Are you
They
freedom
were a
to
little.
practice your religion. I'm
They were
freedom
kind of hardcore.
free not to practice a religion.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not forced to practice yours.
Absolutely. No, I can see that. Which leads me to a kind of a spiritual side of writing. You have written, you have summarized the lives of your beloved departed relatives. I've never been called upon to do that. My sisters were apparently ready to go. Like newspapers have obits ready for really old celebrities.
Uh-huh.
They were ready to, they had all the facts lined up. They were ready when my dad left us. They published that on their own. The same thing with my mom. If I could add a little, atmospheric or something, I would do that. But that is a really specialized kind of writing that if a person is a survivor, it involves feelings as well as facts. That is why I've been impressed with how you've done that. At a tough time for the heart, you use the head to get the story of that person's life out. That's tough to do, I would think.
It is. It's tough to be creative when you're in deep grief.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're under the gun.
Yeah.
You got to get this out because the ceremony's next week, and it's got to go in the Sunday paper.
Yeah.
But I always like deadlines. They're motivating, and then it's got to be done by them. As a journalist,
Yeah.
you got a deadline, and as a journalist, you also get, this is crap. Why'd you put that? You're burying the lead. Like you get an editor who doesn't have time to sugarcoat things.
Right, it's true.
And then you get a thick skin, and you also
Yep.
usually, attain a greater level of skill.
Mm-hmm.
So I like deadlines, and actually they've done studies. I don't know if you know about this, but they had they wanted to know which was better, quality or quantity. So they did a study with potters,
Mm-hmm.
and they said you have to produce 100 pots by the end of the week. 100. It doesn't matter what quality they are, but you have to do 100.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said to another group, you have to produce 1 pot by the end of the week, but it has to be perfect. Which group do you think had better quality?
Yeah, right.
Which one?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't venture a guess. Who was it?
It was the ones that had to do 100 pots.
Okay.
Because they didn't worry all the time. They kept just moving
Oh, I
forward
see what
and
you're
kept
saying,
doing
yeah.
it. And sooner or later,
They weren't bogged down in
perfection.
specifics.
Like they just got to get it done.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, there was one that
Yeah.
was great in that.
Right.
So, you know, I think when you sit there and you're writing and you say this has to be perfect, you trip yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
Just get it out there.
Yeah.
Just write.
Right.
Write, and you can come back to it later in writing. Maybe not with bots, but
I used to think that a collection of comic stories that would be funny would be a collection of eulogies by a great eulogist who insisted on using the facts, quote unquote, about the person he was eulogizing, which usually would make for a lot of people walking out of the church. Because as I found out with my, certainly with my father's funeral, funerals are no time for the facts. You know, you want to be as positive as you possibly can about what the person was up to while they were alive. And with the benefit of hindsight, 2014, I entered, as if I were some, high school kid, entered a Father's Day essay contest at the Malibu Surfside News, which I won. And for about a year, I had all these perks, free bottles of wine and free coupons to restaurants and stuff. And what I did for my dad was basically what you did for yours in your obit for him. I basically stated, this was an American male born into a patriarchy who enjoyed doing male things, and here are the maybe 3 or 4, episodes of anything that can resemble sentimentality that he extended toward me, because he was the provider. My mother was the parent. He was not a parent. He did not learn anything about parenting as he grew up observing his own parents. He provided very practical post-war, post-Great Depression family. And it was really tough to think of touching moments in his life as it affected myself and my sisters. And that's when you have to maybe do a little embellishing or do something to spare his reputation. He's the only father I had. You got to respect that, All kinds of things go through your head when you're summarizing the life of a person who you've known all your life.
do you think your dad did the best he could?
They did, both of them did the best they could with what they had, which was not much.
Yep. You got to come to there.
Yep.
And then once you're there,
Yep.
I think it becomes a little easier.
And I'm actually glad that the two of them together, one handling the providing, one handling the parenting, gave me, I think maybe the middle child will agree somewhat, gave me enough to rebel against.
Right?
Whereas I
Gotta know
gave
where
my
the edge are.
children nothing to rebel against. I feel like such a failure as a parent. They had nothing to rebel against. So, and to be able to express that with anecdotes, with names of friends and whatnot, as you did in your obit for your dad, I just think that's its own art form, don't you think?
I did, before I wrote his obit, I Googled best obituaries ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that they all had one thing in common: humor.
Yeah.
It wasn't just born, died,
Right.
these kids
Exactly.
worked here.
Exactly.
And a little imbuing of their personality.
Right.
So my dad could never get the punchline to a joke right.
Yeah.
And it made it even funnier because you knew he was going to screw it up, but you didn't know how.
Yeah.
And he also did have a great sense of style, and he always bought the best.
Mm-hmm.
Actually going through his closets after he died, they were all about 40 years old, but everything was high quality Eddie Bauer.
Mm-hmm.
He liked quality, and he grew up in a very poor family of 10 in Frogtown.
Mm-hmm.
And he paid for his own high school. He
Yeah.
went to a gas station to pay for his private,
Yeah.
it was a
That was a
Catholic
different way of getting ahead back then.
And he went into the Army to pay for his college,
See?
the GI Bill.
Yep.
So, and he felt that we had to do that. I did not get a dime for my college from him,
Mhm.
or I didn't qualify for scholarships or loans.
Mhm.
I paid every penny of my college tuition by working as a dishwasher at Pizza Hut
Mhm.
and a waitress,
Mhm.
and I cleaned professors' houses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I actually, when the economy crashed in 2007,
Mhm.
my husband was freaking out a little bit. I said, "Oh, I've been through way worse than this. We'll be fine."
The American Family Unit, I don't know how this goes in other countries, but the American Family Unit, from the people, from friends of mine down through my life who obviously grew up with their own families, can be a really crazy situation. The dysfunction and the little feuds and stuff like that. You know, can be really not pleasant. I wish more families within the family themselves got along better. We're having a thing now with mine over the typical, you know, divisions in the culture, and it's just not good. I wish it didn't happen, but
I think you have to just see the person and not the politics.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to do because you believe that their politics are maybe infringing on your right to exist. But I don't know. I worry about that too. I actually am like, I've changed so much in my trajectory in my life.
Yep.
I've been a Catholic. I've been a born again Christian.
Yep.
I've been an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
So all through it though, I was still me and I was still a human being with the same value, you know? So
And you should be a sommelier. What you should be.
that's a lot of tests. And you gotta have a good nose. I'd
Look at
rather
this.
just drink.
We've talked enough that the sun has come out. That's how long we've talked. So we want to thank Jackie Hesse for being our guest and wish her well with My Assassin coming to your local theater screens, or maybe screens like that on little tablets and stuff soon. Thank you, dear, for
Thank
being with
you.
us and for visiting. So long for now.